Today for Veterans Day, I'm going to show you an interview here that I did with my cousin Ryan Carstens, who's a pilot in the Navy. But before we get to that, I just want to talk a little bit about why I've chosen to do this. Normally, I love our Veterans Day program at school, and because of COVID, we cannot have our Veterans Day program. So I still think it's important to kind of recognize veterans, even though we can't have an all-school assembly. And I usually love seeing members of the choir at our school and members of the band perform. I love seeing the slideshow that shows the veterans, pictures of the veterans that are family members of our students. So I do think it's important for us to pause and recognize the sacrifices that many service men and women have made for our country. So I want to tell you a little bit about my own story and the veterans in my family. This picture here is a picture of my grandfather. This is Richard Carstens. He was an identical twin. So his twin brother is right here. His name was Al Carstens. And they both, as soon as they finished high school, they went to high school in Illinois.
Well, I joined in. I did ROTC in college. Started that in 1996, and then when I graduated in 2001, I got commissioned in the United States Navy as an ensign, which is basically the O1 or the first rank in the officer on the officer side. And been obviously doing it ever since. Right now, I am a commander or an O5 in the Navy, and been flying. I went through flight school, and I've been flying the E2C and E2D Hawkeye for the last about almost 20 years now. Growing up, my dad was also in the Navy. He was in the Navy pilot as well, and was born in Corpus Christi, Texas. And then kind of moved around a little bit, but went to Florida, in Orlando, lived there for a decent amount of time, and I lived in Bremerton, Maine. Bangor, Maine. I don't know why I said Bremerton there, but Bangor, Maine for a few years, and then moved to Kansas, Wichita, Kansas for about 6 years. And then in high school, moved to the suburbs of Chicago in good old Downers Grove. And after that, went to school in Ames, Iowa, at Iowa State University. And from there, started in the Navy, move around a lot in the Navy. In Pensacola, Florida. And then from there, went to Corpus Christi, Texas. After that, to Meridian, Mississippi. And then to Norfolk, Virginia, which was all basically flight school stuff. And then once I got done there, went to Point Mugu, California, which is just north of Los Angeles, for about 3 years. After that, went to Norfolk, Virginia to be a flight instructor. And then from there, went to Atsugi, Japan, which is a suburb of Tokyo, for about a little over a year and a half. And then came back stateside, back to Point Mugu, California, for about 3 more years. And then went to Newport, Rhode Island for a year for what they call War College to get a master's degree. And then from there, went to Stuttgart, Germany to work on the European Command Staff for about 2 years. Then back to Mugu, crazy enough, for the 3rd time. And then we just moved down to San Diego or Coronado here, and we're working on Naval Air Station North Island right now. A lot of moving around. Yeah, so yeah, I think first thing, if you're interested in college, obviously you can pick up an ROTC scholarship. So if you're looking, if you can enlist out of high school, obviously, or if you want to try and get commissioned as an officer, you have that option to go through college as well. If you're looking to enlist straight out of high school, which is excellent, I think the first thing would just be, hey, what service interests you? Obviously I'm biased towards the Navy. I think the good part about the Navy is you do typically get to see the world, so to speak. So, right now in the COVID environment, port calls aren't obviously what they used to be, and hopefully that'll change soon. But I think it's pretty cool because, folks go out, on my first deployment, I hit port calls in Thailand, in the Middle East, in Singapore. We went to Guam, went to Spain, went to Greece. So a lot of cool places. And that's just in a 6-month deployment. So I think that's something if that interests you, the Navy's probably pretty cool. Now you have to obviously like being on ships, but if you get seasick, maybe not so much. That being said, the Army and the Marines, if you're more into living out in the field and getting dirty and probably be a little more involved in maybe shooting guns and launching grenades and stuff like that, could be some interest there. And then on the Air Force side. It's Air Force is definitely a little different. It's a great service, but we like to call them they're soft since we're in the Navy, and we want to give them a hard time. But definitely, they've got some pretty cool duty stations around the world, and obviously some pretty cool stuff working on aircraft. So it kind of depends on what you're interested in, and obviously go talk to the detailers and kind of see what they have to offer. I would probably say Hong Kong is probably, probably my favorite at that. And then we went to France in this last deployment. So between those two, those are probably my favorites. Two completely different type of things, but it's the culture that you get to see, and especially in Hong Kong, it's just a really, really cool place. And probably my favorite port call I've done so far in the Navy.
Okay. Trace back, I know, I don't know if you remember this, but a few months after September 11th, you were in flight school and Mike and I came down and visited you.
Yeah.
Can you kind of talk to my students? It's amazing. All of my students were born after September 11th, which is hard to think about. So can you kind of describe, you know, what being in flight school and being in Pensacola when September 11th happened, and then what happened the months that followed that for you and how that changed your training?
Yeah, you know, it was kind of crazy. I graduated college and got commissioned in May of 2001, which of course was about 4 months prior to the to 9/11. And so I was in flight school, and crazy enough, I was actually flying a flight when it happened, and they called us on the base frequency and said, "Hey, everyone, we need you guys to land immediately." And my instructor was like, "Oh boy, this is a big deal. If they do something like this," he's like, "typically, like, we've lost an aircraft. Somebody's crashed. Hopefully, no one has passed." But he was really worried because they usually never call everyone back on like a training flight like that. So we come back and land, and you know, we get out of the plane, and they're like, "Hey, you know, someone's flown 2 aircraft into the World Trade Center." So it was really crazy. Obviously, right afterwards, everything was shut down. Right, it was hard to get on base. It was very stringent. They were at a very high, you know, force protection level, and of course, you know, that kind of opened up, you know, a little bit, obviously, as we kind of moved on. But you know, you really saw, you know, as soon as that happens, you know, especially, you know, for the folks that were actually in the fleet, had finished their, you know, their time learning how to fly their aircraft, you know, people were wanting to go on deployment. You know, people were chomping at the bit to you know, to go out and fly and drop bombs and, you know, take it back at, you know, the folks that were responsible for 9/11. So that was really, really cool to see from, you know, a military standpoint, that folks were, hey, you know, let's go. As soon as it happened, it was like, we're ready to get after this and be the first ones out there to take it to them. But it was definitely a pretty crazy time, and yeah, it's been obvious. We've been out there for a while, so I've done about 5 deployments to the Middle East, flying off over both Afghanistan, Iraq, and Syria. So it's pretty crazy to think how far we've come with that whole you know, scenario. But it was definitely a different time and weird to be around when that kind of first happened.
Do you remember thinking, like, you know, I did this ROTC thing, I never thought I would actually be flying combat hours, and then you know, after 9/11, it became clear that you would be flying in combat?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a standpoint of, like, obviously nobody wants, you know, anyone to go to war, or you know, so that to be flying in combat, and you know, no one wants that to happen. But I would also say, you know, definitely, you know, that you're going in, no matter what service you're in, that's a possibility. So obviously, if that's not something that you're interested in doing, obviously I wouldn't recommend joining. But you know, for us, you know, not that we want war to happen or anything like that, but you know, that's part of the reason that you're there and what your job is. So not to say we're happy about it, but that's what you train to do, and you hope you never have to do it. But to have done it, I'm definitely, you know, again, I'm not happy it happened, but happy to have done it, and proud to have been out there flying and helping the folks on the ground.
So I feel kind of naive to admit this, but I didn't realize how many combat hours you had until after I went to your ceremony. So how many combat hours do you have right now?
Oh, let's see. So I would say, I have to do the math. I'm guessing it's around 200 to between 200 and 300, probably around there. The E2C Hawkeye flies fairly long missions, so but it's probably, I'm guessing between 250 and 300 if I had to look at it. The Navy bases it off of you get, you know, based on how many flights you do is how they kind of add up, you know, where you give air medals. So this last deployment, I had gotten my 5th air medal, and for us, we get that for the cumulative amount of flights that you've done in combat. So, but yeah, it's been pretty crazy. A lot of flight time, a lot of time in the Middle East, that's for sure. Let's see. In combat, nothing crazy enough. Nothing too crazy. I mean, we were involved in doing some comm relay for some communications relay for some of the troops that were on the ground in the middle of some firefights there. So that's definitely something that you know, kind of piques your interest. But Now, I would tell you I've had a couple single engines. So we have this aircraft that we fly, the E2.
I don't want to hear that.
Exactly right. We we had basically to shut down an engine a couple times. So we were down to one engine coming back to land the ship, which was definitely challenging, especially at night for one of them. And then one time we got one of our, on a landing at the ship, we missed we bolter is what you call it. We miss all of the wires, so we can't stop. And one of our power levers got stuck, so we couldn't push our power levers forward. So we went off the edge of the carrier and we went all the way below the deck. And then we finally got the power levers down and up, and we were able to fly away. So that's probably the one where I had to clean my shorts out the most, because we were probably within 5-10 feet of hitting the water before we actually recovered that aircraft and got it around. So that's probably the scariest.
So just to make sure I understand, you missed every rope, right?
Yep, every wire. Yeah, exactly. There's 4 wires on most of the carriers that we have right now in stock.
And then for some reason, like, you couldn't just pull up and fly away.
Yeah, the power lever, you have to push it forward to get power back on the plane. Well, it got stuck. It was a malfunction in the aircraft, and luckily we got it fixed. But by the time we got it fixed, we had dissipated so much of our energy that we had floated off the edge of the deck, and we were going down towards the water. There's only about 60 feet between the top of the deck to the water there. We got the power levers finally kind of back forward where they needed to be to produce thrust through the engines, built enough thrust up, and we were able to fly away. But we were definitely we were so close to the water they had to do an inspection on our landing gear to make sure we didn't touch the water. So it was that would have probably been a real bad day had we probably not recovered that. I don't think I'd be here right now. So that's probably the scariest thing that I've had to deal with.
Right. So the plane.
That's correct. Yeah, we have a dome on top. So and we actually have air crew in the back of the plane as well. So on the top of it, we may hit the dome in the front. If we ejected, we'd be leaving 3 people in the back to unfortunately go down with the plane. So I don't think they'd appreciate that.
Yeah.
I think coming home from deployment is probably the best memories. I've done about I guess about 6 total, depending on how you kind of cut it there. But usually what you'll do is you'll be gone for about 7 months or so. You fly off the ship, after being gone for 7 months. And this last one we did around the world deployment. So we left San Diego, and then we came all the way. We did around the world, and we came back to Norfolk, Virginia. So we call that an around the world cruise. But we flew off the boat, and then flew cross country to come back to home. And no one's seen their family in 7 months for the most part. So those are always the most fun when you're gone for about 6-7 months. The anticipation and then the homecoming where you land and all the families are there to see you land. And then obviously you get to see your family for the first time in 7 months. That's probably, probably the best memories that you have. The fly-ins are always fun when you're gone for 6 or 7 months.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that most people tell you right off the bat is time away from your family. Whether you have spouses and kids, or maybe it's just could be moms, dads, brothers, sisters, whatever. That's probably the toughest because you're gone a lot of coming and going. Because it's not just deployments that you're gone. There's a lot of different other things that you'll be gone for. But that's probably the biggest thing. And then you move a lot. We've in 20 years we've been in, we haven't been at the same duty station twice. Not to say that you can't do that, but so a lot of moving. So that can become tough, not only on yourself, but if you have kids and stuff like that, especially schools and friends and stuff like that, as you can imagine, can be a little challenging as well. So I think that's probably the most challenging, or probably the biggest negative I would say about it is probably those 2 things.
Okay.
Yeah, I think first and foremost, find something that you love to do and try and pursue that. Obviously, especially as you move on towards high school and figuring out whether you want to go to college or not, or do something else out of there. Find something you like to do, because obviously, if you're doing something, for the rest of your life, you want to hopefully enjoy it, because you're not going to be happy if you don't. Other than that, I would just say enjoy yourself, work hard in school, which I'm sure everyone's going to roll their eyes at when I say that. But and then ultimately just be responsible for your actions, own up, and then try and get better. That's probably the biggest thing. And I think the folks that you see that, especially whether you're enlisting or you're an officer, folks that do well, don't make excuses. When they screw up, they admit it and they just try and get better. Everyone makes mistakes. I screw up all the time, but it's the folks that make excuses or try and blame somebody else and don't want to take it on that have a tougher time succeeding. So that would be my biggest recommendation. And the other thing is, to me, it's, hey, you're going to get knocked down. Everyone does. And it's, it doesn't matter if you get knocked down, it's whether you get back up. So, just be resilient, and you'll be successful whatever you do.
Okay, last.
Yeah, I think it's saying thanks for those that have come before us, and have served to give us the freedoms that we have. Doesn't obviously, you could go over a bunch of different conflicts, and whether it's world wars, Vietnam, Korea, the Gulf War, but it's recognizing those folks that have sacrificed, and a lot of those folks aren't still here. There's those folks that have sacrificed and obviously are still around and made it back, but there's a lot of folks that made the ultimate sacrifice, obviously we're fighting for something bigger, but lost their life doing it. And I think it's just important to remember that, and just be appreciative of it, and no matter what your political feelings are on whatever it might be, just understand that there, a lot of the stuff that we have in this country and the freedoms that we have wouldn't be here if it wasn't for folks from years and years and years that haven't come forward to step up and fight for the freedoms that we have. So I think that's what it means to me, and it's something that I think about obviously every Veterans Day.
All right. Well, thank you.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Well, and tell your kids and your wife thank you, because I think they play a role in, being a military family is not the easiest thing.
No, you're absolutely right. That's a huge sacrifice for the kids, and obviously whether it's your wife, your husband, or whatever. No, for sure. That's obviously the service members aren't going to be able to do what they do without that support. So if they don't have it, they're not going to be able to do their job, within the military. So huge piece of it. You're absolutely right.